Alpha banished his pregnant Luna and left her to die. The moon goddess made him pay. The night sky was heavy with clouds, and the moon hid behind a veil of silver mist. In the heart of the forest, where shadows moved like living things, Selene stumbled along the narrow path, her body trembling with pain. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, the life inside her the only warmth she could hold onto. She had once believed she belonged in the palace, safe beside her alpha Cairo, but that belief had been ripped from her heart like a cruel wind. Cairo, the alpha of the Ironclaw pack, was as feared as he was admired. His presence alone commanded loyalty and obedience, and yet, behind his cold eyes, there had always been a shadow of something more, something Selene had thought she understood. But when he had discovered that she carried his child, something in him had turned, and in that moment she had realized she had never truly known him. The memory of that night haunted her. The hall of the palace had been lit with a crimson glow from the torches, flickering against the stone walls. Cairo had stood there, statuesque and silent, while his counsel whispered behind him. When he finally spoke, his voice had been sharp, cutting through her very soul. "You cannot stay," he had said. "A child, a weakness. I cannot have it in my pack. I cannot have it in my life." Her heart had shattered in that instant. She had pleaded, begged, offered her love, her loyalty, her very life, but nothing softened his expression. His decision was absolute, like the strike of a blade. "You leave tonight," he commanded. "Go to the forest. Survive if you can. If not, then you deserve whatever fate chooses." And so, without another word, she had been cast into the wilderness, left to the mercy of the night and its hidden dangers. Her tears had blurred the path before her as she ran, every step filled with agony and disbelief. She had loved him. She still did, even as her body screamed with betrayal and fear. Now, days later, she leaned against a tree, shivering in the cold. Her small fire, which she had managed to spark from flint and dried leaves, crackled softly, sending shadows dancing across the undergrowth. The forest seemed alive, whispering secrets she could not understand, yet sensing her pain. It was then that she heard it, a soft, mournful howl, distant but carrying through the night. She froze, heart pounding, as a shape emerged from the mist. A large white wolf, its fur glimmering faintly under the sliver of moonlight that managed to pierce the clouds. Its eyes were pale, almost glowing, and for a moment Selene felt as though it was looking directly into her soul. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The wolf's gaze did not waver. Slowly it stepped closer, then turned and walked a few paces into the forest, pausing to look back at her as if urging her to follow. Selene hesitated, fear battling with curiosity. She had survived by instinct, but something about this creature felt sacred, like a sign. Taking a deep breath, she rose, letting the wolf guide her through the dark trees. The moonlight revealed small streams and hidden paths, places that the palace guards could never have imagined existed. Hours passed. Selene's legs burned with exhaustion, and her chest ached from the cold night air, but she pressed on. At last, they reached a small clearing where the grass shimmered silver under the moonlight. In the center stood an ancient stone altar, weathered and covered in moss, yet exuding a strange power that made Selene's heart quicken. "You brought me here," she murmured to the wolf. It let out a soft growl, then disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone. The moment she stepped closer to the altar, the air shifted. A gentle voice, melodic and distant, floated around her. "Selene," it said, echoing as if from every direction. "Do not despair. You carry a life of light, and the darkness that surrounds you is not the end." Selene stumbled, clutching her belly. Who are you?" she asked. "I am the moon goddess," the voice whispered, soft yet commanding. "You were cast aside, yet you were never abandoned. Your strength will grow. Your heart will guide you. And he, the Alpha, he will learn what it means to lose what he never cherished." Tears streamed down her face. I am weak. I am nothing. Do not mistake your suffering for weakness. the moon goddess replied. "It is the fire that will forge you. Rise, Luna. Rise and claim what is rightfully yours, not in anger but in power and truth." Selene sank to her knees, the weight of her despair almost too much to bear. Yet beneath it, a new warmth stirred, filling the hollow space left by betrayal. She realized that the life growing inside her was not just her child. It was a spark of hope, a reason to survive, to fight, to become something stronger. The wind swirled around the clearing, lifting her hair and brushing her skin with a touch that felt like blessing. The moonlight, breaking briefly through the clouds, seemed to kiss her shoulders, infusing her with energy she had never known. Her wounds, both physical and emotional, did not vanish, but the sharp edge of pain dulled, replaced by resolve. Days turned into nights, and Selene learned to live with the forest. She discovered hidden streams teeming with fish, caves with soft moss to rest, and herbs that eased her discomfort. Yet every step was a test of endurance. Wolves lurked in shadows, spirits whispered through the trees, and hunger gnawed at her body. But she survived. And every night she spoke to the moon, seeking guidance, seeking strength, and slowly she began to feel it. The magic of her blood, the blessing of the goddess, awakening within her. Yet even as she grew stronger, thoughts of Cairo haunted her. She remembered the look in his eyes the night he sent her away. Cold, distant. Regret flickered, she was certain, but pride had always been stronger. She hated him, yes, but she also ached for him in a way she could not name. She cursed herself for loving him still, even as she trained herself to fight, to hunt, to endure. One evening, under a crescent moon, Selene sat by her fire, exhausted from a long day of foraging. The forest was silent, the wind still. Then a voice in the shadows, low and cautious, whispered her name. Selene, her heart leapt. She spun, but the forest was empty. The shadows stretched, yet nothing moved. Her hands shook. Could it be him? Had Cairo come to find her? Or was it something else, something tied to the moon goddess's will? The answer came not in form, but in presence. A figure moved behind the trees, strong and silent. A wolf barked softly, warning, but the figure stepped into the clearing, and Selene gasped. It was a man cloaked in the night, eyes glowing faintly under the moonlight, but not Cairo. No, something older, wiser, a protector of the forest, a spirit perhaps, or a servant of the moon goddess. The figure watched her carefully, not threatening, yet impossible to ignore. "You have survived," the voice said, resonant and steady. "The night has tested you, Luna, and you have endured, but the true trial has only begun. He will come, and when he does, you must be ready." Selene swallowed, her breath shaky, her fists clenched. She did not yet know whether she would forgive him or shatter him, but one thing was certain. She would not be the same Luna he had cast aside. The night deepened, and the white wolf returned, circling her fire before sitting silently at her side. Its eyes, glowing faintly in the darkness, seemed to speak the promise of the moon itself. He will pay. He will learn. And you will rise. Selene gazed at the moon breaking through the clouds, the silver light washing over her. Somewhere deep inside, a fire burned, a fire that would not be extinguished, no matter how long the darkness sought to claim her. She placed a hand on her belly, whispering to the life within, "I will survive. I will fight. And one day he will see. He will see who you are, who we are." And in the forest, where shadows whispered and the wind carried secrets, a distant howl echoed, ominous, beautiful, and filled with promise. The journey of the banished Luna had begun. Selene awoke before dawn, the first light of the crescent moon brushing the forest canopy with silver. Her body was stronger now. The pain from the banishment had faded into a dull memory, replaced by a quiet strength she had never known. The forest, once frightening and strange, had become her home. Every rustle of leaves, every flicker of movement in the shadows, was no longer a threat but a companion. The white wolf, which she now called Lumen, lay beside her. Its presence was comforting, steady, almost magical. When Selene had first met it, she had been afraid, thinking it a guardian sent to test her. But over time, she had realized Lumen was a guide, a link to the moon goddess's will. "You've grown strong, Luna," the voice of the goddess echoed softly in her mind like the wind through the trees. "But strength alone will not protect you. You must learn control, patience, and purpose. Your destiny calls for more than survival." Selene nodded, closing her eyes and focusing on the warmth of the life within her. Her unborn child kicked gently, a reminder of her new responsibility. "I will do what I must," she whispered. "I will not be weak again." The days passed in a rhythm of training, meditation, and exploration. Selene learned to move through the forest silently, hunting small game, finding herbs, and listening to the spirits of the land. She discovered that she could sense more than just the physical world. Shadows whispered warnings, the wind carried messages, the river reflected truths she could not yet understand. Her transformation was not only physical but spiritual. She began to feel the power of the moon goddess flowing through her blood, a gentle fire that sharpened her senses and heightened her awareness. It was subtle at first, a glow in the dark, a whisper in the wind, but it grew stronger each day. She could summon small bursts of light, heal minor wounds, and communicate with the animals around her. The forest had become her sanctuary, and in it, she found the confidence that Cairo's rejection had once stolen. Yet, despite her growth, Selene could not forget Cairo. The memory of his cold eyes and the words that had banished her haunted her. At first, she had only wanted revenge, imagining him desperate, humiliated, wishing for her return. But now, her emotions were more complex. She still felt anger and betrayal, but there was also longing, a soft ache in her chest that would not fade. She had to understand him, understand why he had cast her out, and in time, perhaps, she would decide whether she would forgive him or not. Meanwhile, back in the palace, Cairo's life had begun to unravel. The pack had remained loyal, yet whispers of the Alpha's coldness reached every corner of the halls. Nights were the hardest. Sleep eluded him, and visions of Selene haunted him relentlessly. Sometimes he would awake to find himself standing at the edge of the forest, half expecting to see her there, fragile and trembling as she had been the night he cast her out. He tried to deny the pain, to bury it beneath duty and pride. But every decision he made, every command he gave, felt hollow. His council had begun to notice his distraction. Even his strongest warriors sensed the change, the absence of his focus, the faltering of his usual unwavering resolve. And then came the whispers. "The Luna he cast aside, she walks the forest untouched by death. She grows in power, watched by the moon goddess herself." At first, Cairo dismissed them as tales spun to frighten him. But when one of his scouts returned, pale and trembling, confirming the stories, Cairo's heart clenched. The child he had tried to deny, the Luna he had forsaken, was not only alive but thriving, and he could not stop thinking of her. One evening, Selene sat atop a hill overlooking a small glade. The moon hung low and full, painting her hair with silver light. She could feel the pulse of the forest beneath her feet, and she sensed a presence watching her. Not threatening, not hostile, but observant. Lumen padded beside her, ears pricked, growling softly. "Someone comes," Selene whispered. The presence drew closer and the air shimmered. She braced herself, focusing on the magic that flowed through her, the power that had grown steadily since her banishment. A man stepped from the shadows, tall and cloaked, with eyes that seemed to reflect the moon itself. Selene's heart leapt, not with fear, but recognition of a power equal to her own. "I am here to guide you," the man said, voice calm and commanding. "The moon goddess has chosen you for a destiny far greater than you realize. But the path is not without danger. The Alpha you once loved, he will come, and when he does, you must be ready." Selene studied him, curiosity and caution warring within her. "Why tell me this now?" she asked. "Because the moment approaches when the past will meet the present. You must know your strength, your control, your purpose. Only then will you face him without faltering." For hours they trained. The man taught her to focus her energy, to call upon the moonlight, to control the surge of magic within her. Selene discovered she could shape shadows into shields, bend light to hide herself, and even glimpse faint visions of the future. Each lesson brought a thrill, a clarity she had never known. She was no longer the frightened Luna who had been cast into the wilderness. She was becoming something more, something unstoppable. Yet, despite her growing power, her heart remained tethered to Cairo. Each lesson, each whisper from the moon goddess, reminded her of the man who had betrayed her, the alpha who had held her heart in his hands and discarded it like a broken toy. Her desire for revenge had not faded, but it had evolved. She would not destroy him out of anger. She would make him see, make him understand, and perhaps make him regret the choices he had made. Weeks passed, and Selene's reputation grew among the spirits and creatures of the forest. The exiled, the cursed, and the forgotten came to her side, drawn by her strength and by the quiet authority she exuded. She was no longer alone. Wolves, enchanted birds, and spirits gathered in her sanctuary, a small army of the forsaken, bound by loyalty and guided by her compassion. Then, one night, as the full moon rose high above the trees, Selene overheard a conversation she had not expected. Cairo had ventured into the forest, seeking the counsel of the elder wolves. He did not know she was listening, hidden among the shadows. "I was wrong," he whispered, voice tight with emotion. "I should never have let her go, but I cannot yet return. Not until I am worthy, not until I understand what it means to lose her." Her hands clenched into fists. The pain of hearing his regret mingled with the fire of her growing power. She had imagined this moment countless times, but now that it was real, it burned her in ways she could not control. Rage, sorrow, longing, they all collided inside her, and yet beneath it a quiet determination settled. She would not act impulsively. She would wait. She would prepare. And when the time came, she would decide the course of their fate. That night, as she lay under the silver glow of the moon, she whispered a vow to herself and to the life within her. "I will rise. I will be stronger than I have ever been." And he will see what he lost, what he abandoned, and what cannot be taken back. In the distance, a howl echoed, deep and resonant, carrying through the forest like a herald of the coming storm. Lumen padded to her side, pressing its head gently against her shoulder. The white wolf's eyes shone with quiet wisdom, a reminder that the moon goddess's plan was unfolding, that the threads of destiny were weaving together, and that Selene was no longer powerless. The Alpha would come. He would seek her, perhaps unknowingly, perhaps driven by the ghosts of his own mistakes. And when he did, Selene would be ready, not just as a Luna, but as a force of nature, a mother, a protector, and a woman who had survived the impossible. The night stretched on, filled with whispers, shadows, and silver light. Selene closed her eyes, feeling the pulse of the forest, the life within her, and the fire that burned brighter than any fear. The moon goddess had spoken, and the path was set. Somewhere, Cairo's heart ached, unaware of the transformation taking place just beyond his reach. He would learn in time that the woman he had cast away was no longer the fragile Luna he had known. She was rising, and the reckoning would come. And so, under the watchful eye of the moon, Selene's journey continued, no longer a flight from death, but a march toward destiny, power, and the ultimate test of love and redemption. The forest hummed around her, alive with secrets, magic, and promise. The distant howl of a wolf echoed again, carrying a warning, a challenge, and a call to destiny. Selene's eyes shone with resolve. She was ready for whatever was to come. The capital lay in shadow, wrapped in the pale glow of a waning moon. Selene crouched atop a crumbling tower on the outskirts, her dark cloak blending with the night. Below her, the palace spread like a sleeping beast, its towers and battlements casting long shadows across the courtyard. She had watched it for nights, learning its routines, memorizing the patrols and noting where the council met in secret. She had come not just as a Luna, but as a force tempered by hardship and the blessing of the moon goddess. The magic coursing through her veins pulsed with the rhythm of the night, making her senses sharper, her movements swifter. The forest had made her strong. Now the city would teach her patience, cunning, and restraint. She crouched low as a patrol of guards passed below. With a quiet step and a pulse of her energy, shadows bent around her form, hiding her presence. She could hear their whispers, concerns about the Alpha, rumors of a Luna in the forest, and the murmur of unease that had begun to settle over the capital. Her heart beat faster, but not from fear. Tonight she would see him, the man who had cast her aside, the Alpha who had broken her heart. She did not know what she would do, only that she must confront the past to claim her future. Inside the palace, Cairo paced his chambers, restless and tense. The reports had reached him. A Luna had been seen near the forest, moving with grace and power beyond human capability. He could feel her presence in his mind, as if the moon itself whispered of her survival. His hands clenched into fists. "She is alive," he muttered to himself, voice tight with emotion, "and she is stronger than I imagined." A messenger knocked, bowing low. "My Alpha, the council requests your presence. There is news of unusual occurrences near the forest edge." Cairo nodded without speaking and strode into the moonlit halls. The stone walls seemed colder than usual, the silence heavier. For the first time in his life, the Alpha felt uncertain. Seleni's survival and growing power had unsettled him in a way he could not name. He had lost control over the one woman he had loved, and that loss gnawed at him like a persistent shadow. Meanwhile, Selene slipped through the palace gates, unseen, guided by moonlight and the whispers of the spirits who now aided her. Her cloak fluttered softly behind her, and her senses were alive to every movement. The guards' steps, the wind shifting through the courtyards, even the faint vibrations of Cairo moving within his chambers. Finally, she reached the great hall, the space where she had once walked as his Luna, now heavy with the authority of the Alpha and his council. The memories hit her, sharp and raw. She could almost feel the echoes of her own footsteps in the stone corridors, the warmth of a hand that had once held hers but had now turned cold. And then she saw him. Cairo stood in the center of the hall, his posture rigid, his eyes scanning the council with controlled authority. The moonlight spilled through the windows, catching the angles of his face, illuminating a man caught between pride and guilt. He had changed. The years of rule and regret had sharpened him, made him more formidable, but she was no longer the frightened Luna who had once stood before him. Their eyes met. Time seemed to freeze. Selene felt the old ache in her chest, the same mix of love and betrayal that had haunted her for weeks. But beneath it, a new current ran, a quiet power that flowed from her, visible in the tension of her stance and the calm strength in her gaze. Cairo's breath hitched slightly, and for the first time he faltered. The council noticed nothing, but the Alpha's mind was entirely focused on the woman in the shadows. "Selene," he whispered, almost to himself. The name carried regret, longing, and a fear he could not fully understand. Selene stepped forward, letting the shadows peel away from her, revealing herself fully. She was dressed simply, yet the aura around her seemed to pulse with magic. Her eyes, bright and unwavering, locked onto Cairo's. "You should not be here," she said, voice steady, carrying the weight of the forest and the power she now commanded. "I should have never let you go," Cairo replied, his voice low, heavy with regret. I was wrong. I thought I was protecting you, protecting the pack, but I failed." Selene's hands clenched at her sides. "You failed me, Cairo. You left me to die when all I wanted was to be by your side. And yet here I stand, alive, stronger than you imagined. And I am not the same Luna you banished." The room seemed to pulse around them, as if the palace itself held its breath. Cairo stepped closer, but Selene raised a hand, a faint glow emanating from her palm. Shadows bent and shifted, forming a subtle shield around her. "You will not touch me," she said, her voice calm but unwavering. "Not until you understand the weight of what you have done." Cairo froze. He had seen power before, warriors who could fight, strategists who could bend the pack to their will, but this was different. This was a Luna infused with magic, guided by the moon goddess, tempered by survival and strengthened by purpose. She was no longer fragile, she was formidable. I am trying," he said, voice strained. "I have been trying every day to understand, to be worthy of you. I failed then, but I will not fail again." Seleni's eyes narrowed. She wanted to believe him. Part of her longed to believe him, but the fire in her chest, the memory of his betrayal, would not allow it yet. She had grown, and she would not be swayed by words alone. "You must earn it," she said. "Not with words, but with actions. Show me you understand what it means to lose someone, and maybe then we can speak of what comes next." Cairo's jaw tightened. He knew she was right. He had been arrogant, blinded by pride. He had thought that strength meant controlling others, but now he realized that true strength was measured in humility, in acknowledging one's failures, and in protecting those he loved without claiming dominance over them. The tension in the room grew. The council watched silently, sensing something extraordinary but unable to comprehend the depth of what unfolded. The moonlight spilled across the hall, and the glow around Seleni's hands seemed to thrum with anticipation. Suddenly, a shadow shifted at the far end of the hall. Seleni's senses flared. A whisper of movement, a flicker of intent, reminded her that the palace was not empty. Hidden threats lurked in corners, waiting for opportunity. She tightened her focus, drawing on the magic within, feeling it pulse in harmony with her heartbeat. Cairo noticed the shift too, stepping instinctively in front of her. Their eyes met again, and for the first time they understood. They were stronger together, yet a chasm of past pain still separated them. Their alliance, fragile and unspoken, hung in the balance, and neither knew who would make the first move toward trust. The distant howl of a wolf echoed through the walls of the palace, carried by the night air. Selene felt it in her chest, a reminder of the moon goddess's presence, a call to destiny. The forest had not abandoned her, and the magic within her was growing, ready to shape the course of events that were yet to come. Cairo's gaze softened, the hardness in his eyes melting into a mixture of regret and longing. "Selene, I will prove it. I will prove that I have changed." Selene studied him, searching for sincerity, searching for the man she had once loved and the one who had hurt her so deeply. "Time will tell, Cairo. Actions speak louder than words, and the moon watches over us. It will not lie." A silence fell over the hall. The council whispered softly among themselves, sensing the shift in power and the weight of what was unfolding. The Alpha and the Luna, once torn apart by fear and pride, now faced a collision of fates, neither knowing where the first step would lead. Selene took a deep breath, letting the moonlight wash over her. She could feel the pulse of her magic, the life growing within her, and the power she had cultivated in the forest. She was no longer fragile, no longer fearful, and no longer bound by the limits Cairo had once imposed. And yet, the ache in her heart remained. Love and betrayal intertwined, a complicated tapestry she would have to navigate with care. The moon goddess's voice whispered softly in her mind, guiding her, reminding her that the path to destiny was never simple, and that strength without wisdom could be dangerous. The night deepened. Selene and Cairo stood facing each other, two souls bound by history, by love, and by the consequences of their choices. Outside, the wind carried the distant howl again, a promise of trials yet to come. The palace walls held secrets, magic pulsed unseen, and destiny waited patiently. The Luna had risen, the Alpha had faltered, and the collision of their fates had only begun. The moon hung high above the capital, full and radiant, casting silver light over the palace and the surrounding city. Its glow seemed to pulse, in time with Selene's heartbeat, as though the moon goddess herself had come to watch the final act unfold. Selene stood at the edge of the great hall, her cloak flowing behind her like liquid shadow. The forest had gifted her strength, the moon goddess had granted her wisdom, and the life within her had become a quiet, steady fire. Every step she took echoed with purpose, every breath carried the certainty that she was no longer the Luna who had been cast aside. She was not alone. Lumen, the white wolf, sat at her side, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. Around them, spirits of the forest and creatures she had gathered over the months lingered silently in the shadows, their presence a reminder of the power she now commanded. Cairo waited in the center of the hall, his posture tense, hands clenched at his sides. The Alpha had changed since the first time she had confronted him here. Pride still lingered, but it had softened into something new, humility, regret, and a quiet determination to earn back what he had lost. His gaze met Selene's, and for the first time, neither flinched. They stood as equals, two souls bound by love, betrayal, and the trials of destiny. "Selene," he said, voice steady but low, carrying through the hall, "I do not expect forgiveness. I only want the chance to make things right. To be the Alpha you deserve, the man you deserve." Selene studied him, her eyes searching for truth. Words alone were not enough. Actions would speak louder. She could feel the magic coursing through her veins, the pulse of the forest and the moon goddess guiding her. "You will have to prove it, Cairo," she replied. "Not with promises, not with words, but with your choices. And you must understand, love cannot be commanded. It cannot be earned by fear or pride." Cairo nodded, a flicker of emotion passing through his eyes. "I understand. I have learned the hard way. I have felt the emptiness of what I cast away, and I will not make the same mistake again." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the wind stirred, carrying whispers through the palace halls, and the distant howl of a wolf echoed like a herald of what was to come. The council and guards sensed the tension, but none dared intervene. This was no longer a matter of politics or rank. It was a reckoning of hearts, of power, and of destiny. Selene took a step forward, letting the moonlight flow over her, revealing the subtle glow that now surrounded her hands. "Then we begin," she said softly. "Not as Alpha and Luna, not as master and subject, but as two souls facing what must be faced together." Cairo met her gaze, his eyes reflecting the silver light, and for the first time, Selene saw a man who had truly changed. He did not reach for her with force or command. He waited, patient and honest, letting her lead. The first trial came swiftly. Shadows in the corners of the hall twisted unnaturally, dark tendrils moving with purpose. These were not ordinary shadows. They were remnants of the curses that lingered in the palace, twisted spirits drawn to discord and pain. They had sensed the clash of power and intent, and they sought to disrupt the fragile balance. Selene stepped forward, raising her hands. A wave of silver energy flowed from her palms, illuminating the hall. The shadows recoiled, then surged forward again. Lumen growled, bounding to her side, and together they met the darkness with precision and strength. Cairo joined them, not to lead but to fight alongside her. The two moved as a single force, one guiding the other, their combined energy forming a shield of moonlight and shadow that pushed back the twisted spirits. It was a test, but also a lesson. Strength and love, when balanced, could overcome even the darkest forces. Hours passed as they battled, sweat and magic mingling in the air. Selene's heart ached with exertion, but she did not falter. Cairo's presence was steady, reliable, a contrast to the chaotic power swirling around them. And as they fought together, something shifted. The tension between them, pain, anger, longing, began to soften, replaced by a quiet understanding. When the last shadow dissolved into silver mist, the hall fell silent. Moonlight bathed them both, highlighting the exhaustion and the triumph etched on their faces. Selene lowered her hands, breathing heavily, and Cairo did the same. "You fought well," he said, voice gentle, carrying a weight of respect. "Not just with power, but with heart. I see now what I failed to understand before." Selene nodded, letting the words sink in. She could feel the fire of the moon goddess guiding her, but she also felt something else, a warmth, a connection that had never truly left her. "We are stronger together," she said softly. "But the test is not over. It never truly is. Life will challenge us always. But we face it as equals." Cairo stepped closer, careful not to break the fragile distance she had created. "Then let me walk beside you, not as your alpha, not as your master, but as a man who has learned, who has changed, who will never let you face the world alone again." Selene studied him for a long moment. The fire inside her, the pain and strength, mingled with something softer, hope perhaps, or the beginning of forgiveness. She did not speak, only held his gaze. And in that silent exchange, the air seemed to shimmer, the moonlight brightening as if the moon goddess herself acknowledged the choice being made. The distant howl of a wolf rang out again, louder this time, and Selene smiled faintly. It was a sound of promise, of protection, of destiny fulfilled. Lumen padded to Cairo's side, pressing its head against him briefly before returning to Selene. The creatures and spirits of the forest had witnessed this union of purpose, and their presence added weight and approval to the moment. Finally, Selene placed a hand on her belly, the life inside her moving gently, as if sensing the resolution. "We have a child to protect," she whispered, "a life to guide, and together we will ensure they know love, strength, and the courage to face any darkness." Cairo's hand hovered for a moment, then rested lightly over hers. "I will protect you both. I will honor what I failed to honor before, and I will never leave you again." The hall seemed to breathe with them, a living entity responding to the balance of hearts and magic. The moon goddess's presence was subtle but undeniable. A soft light in the corners, a gentle hum in the air, a quiet reminder that destiny had been guided, lessons had been learned, and a new chapter had begun. Selene felt tears prick at her eyes, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of relief, of triumph, of hope reborn. She had survived the impossible, grown stronger, and faced the one who had hurt her most, and found not just vengeance, but understanding and the possibility of love renewed. Cairo knelt briefly, not in submission but in humility, a symbolic gesture acknowledging the journey they had both endured. "I am yours," he said softly. "In whatever way you allow, I am yours, and I will walk this path with you, every step." Selene's gaze softened, the fire of the past tempered into a quiet glow. "Then let us walk together," she said. "Not as Alpha and Luna, not as master and subject, but as partners, as equals, as two souls who have faced darkness and found the light within themselves." The moon shone brighter, casting a silver glow across the hall. Outside, the city slept peacefully, unaware of the monumental shift that had occurred within its walls. But Selene and Cairo knew. They had faced betrayal, survival, power, and love, and had emerged not broken but transformed. The white wolf, Lumen, howled once more, a cry that echoed across the rooftops and into the forest beyond. It was a sound of victory, of promise, and of protection. Selene and Cairo exchanged a look, understanding, acceptance, and the quiet thrill of a new beginning. As they stood together, moonlight bathing them in silver, Selene felt the life within her stir once more. She smiled softly. "We are ready," she whispered. "For whatever comes next, we are ready." Cairo nodded, placing a protective arm around her shoulders, drawing her close without claiming dominance, only offering support and partnership. "Together," he agreed, "always together." The wind rustled through the palace, carrying the whispers of the moon goddess, a gentle blessing for the union, the protection, and the new life they had vowed to nurture. Shadows and light danced around them, a reminder that balance had been restored. The trials of the past had forged something new, a love tempered by fire, strengthened by endurance, and guided by destiny. And as the moon shone down, casting silver across the land. The future stretched before them, not without challenges, but filled with hope, redemption, and the quiet magic of a love that had survived the darkness. Selene and Cairo, once torn apart by fear and pride, now stood united, not as master and subject, not as Alpha and Luna, but as two souls reborn under the watchful eye of the moon, ready to face whatever destiny had in store. The forest, the city, and the heavens seemed to hold their breath, acknowledging the end of one journey and the beginning of another, a journey of love, strength, and redemption that would echo in legend for generations to come.